is how do we find the closest person? How do we then, the back office team evolved a process, like almost 25 people trying to coordinate this thing, and riders were so it was a very nice collaborative effort. Everybody felt like they were doing something, and we aggregated small wins. Each person has to do only 1 or 2 sorties in a day, but in the end, look what happened. So this is importance of saying that do small things. It's the same thing with the My15Min City. Don't think of 10 people slogging 24/7 thinking we can save the world. Everybody do small things. It aggregates. Then there's the society angle where you and me, how are we making a change?
Right.
Our cultural attitudes towards this also needs to change. We have to look at active mobility as something that we can consume in a responsible way, and we participate in it in a proactive way, and in a way that it is additive to the other two, and is not completely in opposition to these other two.
Right.
You can't be making decisions, personal choices of buying more and more vehicles and not getting on a bicycle, and then telling the other two people to do something. They'll be like, you guys don't want it, what am I going to do? You are not cycling. If you go to a livable city somewhere in Europe or someplace, you will like the place. It feels so good living in that place. You could walk, you could bike. Of course, the weather plays a good role, and your city is built so nicely as well, right? And everybody around you is doing something that you love, which is walking, cycling, going to a place, you're taking the public transport. There are a lot of people who do that, and it kind of excites you. And we kind of figure out, why is our city not like this? Is it the people? Is it the infrastructure? Is it both? Is it neither? So addressing those challenges does excite some people, and I'm one among them.
I am Bikey Venki, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is a computer science graduate with a post-graduation in public policy. He brings more than 25 years of experience in using technology and data to affect social change. Over the last 13 years as an advocate for sustainable transportation, he has been a part of various policy changes in sustainability area in Bangalore. He has enabled 342% increase in allocation in the comprehensive master plan for cycling and walking, helped put more than 20 kilometers of cycle tracks in Bangalore. His solutions and campaigns around behavior change in sustainable transportation are currently a national movement. He founded and is the chief convener at Council for Active Mobility, a collective of many organizations working towards accelerating UN Sustainable Development Goals. His Relief Riders initiative during the COVID pandemic won the 2021 UN World Bicycle Day Special Award. He is also an adjunct faculty teaching urban governance for master's students, a director at waste management startup Bioman, and the Bicycle Mayor of Bengaluru. His name is Sathya Sankaran. It has been a real pleasure talking to Sathya on various aspects of cycling activism, cycle tracks, and what is in store for us in Bangalore in terms of various sustainability initiatives and what we can do in order to help him and others in these activities. Let us dive into the chat with him. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Satya. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Becky, for having me over. Nice to meet you here as well, and it's a nice setup.
Thank you. So, what I want to use this opportunity is to kind of get an understanding of various initiatives that are going on right now in terms of improving bicycle infrastructure in the city and around the world, and also want to know various things like the Council of Mobility that has come up and the initiatives that you have done with relief riders and the great work that was going on there and stuff like that. So before we get into that, though, I want to understand, you know, how did you get into cycling and when was this?
I think it was around 2010 when I, was campaigning for sustainable mobility.
Mm.
But then, interestingly, the reason was not about the work itself. It was about my health,
Mm.
really. So I used to have a very bad lower back pain.
Mm.
I couldn't even drive 10 kilometers in a car.
Mm.
And we've gotten used to this driving to work, and it became a little bit of a hassle. It became a habit, and then it got me a lot of pain in my lower back, and I wouldn't be able to sit and even finish 10 kilometers to office.
Mm.
Uh, and I would see a lot of other people, especially my European colleagues.
Mm.
They were very fit, even though they used to work more than I do.
Yeah.
They had incorporated, uh, exercise into their daily lives. And Europe is a very active place, right? You cycle in most cities, you can,
Right.
and you can take public transport because it's expensive to drive. When I spent, I still remember 2005, 2005 in Stockholm. I used to go and buy IKEA furniture on a bus and haul it on a train
Ah.
because it was very expensive to buy a car or even rent one and go around.
Right.
And typically, being an immigrant, you just want to get your stuff done, and
Right.
it was easy to go around. I mean, then it kind of struck me that the lifestyle that we lead has a problem,
Mm.
right? It not just affects us personally, but it also affects the city, because I was doing all of these campaigns around sustainability and figured out that we are not ourselves practicing a very sustainable lifestyle, and it doesn't take a lot of things to do. I did start by doing weekend rides on a bike.
Mm.
I used to run, I used to swim, practice the tri sports. Then I realized that I can just include cycling as a part, because I used to be able to wake up in the morning on the weekends,
Right.
but I wouldn't get enough miles
Mm.
clocked in.
Mm.
So it was easy that I could just ride to work. It was 20 kilometers one way.
Mm.
And I started by doing 1 or 2 days in a week, and I used to do 3 days in a week. The other days I could just take a bus. It was
Mm.
very comfortable.
Mm.
Then I realized that if it was planned well, it was very easy to do that. And my bike trip was always exactly, even the 20-kilometer one, but the initial was around 10 kilometers
Mm.
up and down.
Right.
But then when I switched to a different work location, it became 20. And by then I was fit enough to do that as well.
Right.
And the bike commute was always 1 hour duration,
Yeah.
plus or minus 3 minutes this way or that.
Mm.
But in a car, it would range from 45 minutes to 2.5 hours, depending on the day.
Traffic.
Yeah, traffic. So
Yeah.
that kind of worked out to my favor. I would get my miles in without anybody noticing, and it got me a lot fitter.
Right.
And the weekend rides just became easier for me. So I could just go to Nandi just like that, and without having to.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things, like I told you, is I'm not an athlete. I'm not built as an athlete. I'm not necessarily an athlete, but incorporating these small things into my life, I didn't need to find an excuse in the morning to do this and then come back, right? I'm just anyway going to work and got my thing in.
Yeah.
I could get my run on Saturdays. I could get my swim on Sundays and
Mm.
still get my bike miles. So I would get a good, and I figured out my health just became all right.
Mm.
I didn't have any problems because
Yeah.
of this thing. So that's how it started in 2010, 2011, 2012. By
Mm.
then I was already working on the suburban rail campaign for Bangalore
Mhm.
through with some of my friends. And by 2012, I was working on getting cycle tracks and other things. I was in the NMT task force
Mm.
of the government of Karnataka, Directorate of Urban Land Transport. So in those days, we used to go around and literally take a tape and measure the streets and see what it
Yeah.
is. And so it was exciting times. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
how the whole
How?
journey.
Yeah. How did see? I can understand the in starting to commute
Mm.
because of health issues, or trying to be fitter,
Mm.
and also cutting the commute time and all that, right? And all the usual benefits that we see. That's how I started as well in cycling, trying to I lost a ton of weight,
Mm.
and to maintain that, I thought, okay, what is that, what is something that I always do, right? Every day I go to work, so why not commute to work?
Yeah.
And that's how I bought a bike and started commuting, and quickly I realized it is not enough, because it's 7 kilometers out and 7 kilometers back is not giving enough
Enough, yeah.
endorphins. So I started riding
No.
weekends and stuff. So that's how a lot of us start, right, with
Mm.
commute and all that.
Mm.
But how did you get into this
Call it activism.
activism,
Yeah.
right? What how do you get interested in the activism part of it, bicycle activism part of it?
See, for some of us, the challenge excites us, right? So
Mm.
we are not, we see people and places around us
Mm.
which we like.
Mm.
If you go to a livable city somewhere in Europe or someplace, you will like the place. It feels so good living in that place.
Mm.
You could walk, you could bike. Of course, the weather plays a good role,
Mm.
and your city is built so nicely as well, right?
Right.
And everybody around you is doing something that you love,
Right.
which is walking, cycling, going to a place, you're taking the public transport. There are a lot of people who do that, and it
Mm.
kind of excites you. And we kind of figure out, why is our city not like this?
Mm.
Is it the people? Is it the infrastructure? Is it both? Is it neither? So addressing those challenges does excite some people, and I'm one among them. And I do feel that there is a meaning that is derived when you start looking at things around you and say, is this fixable?
Mm.
And try and acquire the knowledge to say, why is it not fixed already?
Mm.
That process takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's not an easy answer. There are complexities in why it is not fixed already. It's human nature. It's the people around you. It's the culture of the place. It's the culture of the governance system. And together we've done something which is not moving the needle.
Mm.
So understanding that is a journey, and I wanted to get on the journey. I was a consumer of a built form in other cities across the world. Here I found being able to participate in the creation of a better city. And the challenge drove me. So I've been living outside the country for periods of time, but I always felt the urge to come back and see, why is my city not like this?
Yeah.
So that challenge always excited me. I'm a little differently wired, you might say.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That, see, that is what is important, right? There will always be people, who are complaining,
mm,
like me.
mm,
Why, why is it not like that? Why is it not? I mean, I don't complain that much
no, you don't
because I just, I just don't bother
bother.
if it is good road or bad road. I just ride. But a lot of people that you know who look at us
Mm,
and see that, okay, you guys are riding, and how are you riding? This, the roads are so bad, there are no separate lanes, how can you ride with the traffic and all that? But so lot of us are there who know that things are not right, but stop at complaining,
mm,
and not even give it a thought that what can be done.
correct.
So, and there are very few like you who give that, go that extra mile and see, okay, what can be done?
Mm,
What can I do to make it happen? So that is very interesting. And people like those, like people like you, are who make the world a better place for all of us.
well,
So
I wouldn't
yeah,
go that far to say just some of us do, but no, that I think it's okay for not everybody needs to be wired the same way,
right.
right? But it is useful that people like you, who anyway go ahead and do things, are a very important cog in this wheel, because you're the early adopters who kind of help this cause along and say that it would be better for a lot of other people if it was, the infrastructure a lot better, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to make that statement as well. We don't
Right.
have to live with this, but it's important for some people to start.
Yeah.
And people like you who are doing it anyway, give us the motivation to say, look, these are the heroes who are already doing it, right? They've taken a risk, they're taking that risk, because risk appetite of a lot of people is different.
Very
you
different.
cannot you cannot generalize saying that everybody should be like you
Right.
or me.
Definitely not.
And we have to cater to all kinds up to the bottom rung to say, if somebody is really risk aware,
Hmm.
because they are in that position and their mindset is like that, we shouldn't discount that or belittle that.
No.
We should try to say, how can I include?
Yeah.
At the same time, we need to start working with the people who are there and doing a bunch of things and see how can we come together and make things better. And that support is very important for us to go forward. Everybody cannot be sitting on the sidelines. Some will do certain things, some will do a little more if it was a little better. So we'll have to figure that out. There are pros
Yeah.
and cons of everything. The society is, it has different types of people with different risk appetites. We have to
Right.
find out how we have to gauge these percentages of what it
Mm.
is, right? Move the percentages, look for the people on the fence and see how we can get them. Move the ball, move the ball. Then some tipping point will be reached, and we have to find that tipping point. It is not an answer that we have.
Yeah.
So you're constantly finding the tipping point of what is this critical mass of people that will help tip certain things.
Right.
And the attempt for me has always been to find that tipping point.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because all the cities, all the great cities like Amsterdam and all that, all those cities also started
Yes.
somewhere,
yes,
right? They were not always like how they are now,
yes, yes.
because some old pictures of those cities, you can see tons of cars
Yeah.
and everywhere, and same problems that we see now were there, and that's what they addressed and slowly got to the point where it is like the new normal now.
True.
Right.
And there are multiple factors which got them there as well. The first one was the Kindermood campaign, where Amsterdam said enough of kids being murdered on the streets because the accidents were very high. The levels of accidents we have become desensitized to those kind of things, but they
Correct.
weren't, right? As a
Right.
population, they came and said, we don't want this.
Right.
And they launched a campaign which had lots of um, uh, lots of protests and everything, and that comes out of the people who are already the early adopters, right? They
Right.
need to kind of step up and say, I'm going to go and protest. This is not okay for us to be like this.
Right.
And there was also a good governance structure which listened, which didn't say, yeah, these are guys like that, I will do what I have to do, right?
Right.
So that was also there. As a culture, people listened and people said, how do we address this problem and how big of a problem is it? Do we even need to stop these deaths, right? And how do we stop it? Is this a better way to stop it? So there were thoughts around that. The 1970s, that Kindermood campaign, and then the 74 oil embargo also happened, right? Different countries, they were completely shut out for 2 years. There was no oil, there was no fuel, the whole highways were shut, and you couldn't have the cars going around. And different countries chose different approaches. Japan went and built bullet trains. And they said, we are going off of this thing. We will build nuclear power plants and we'll be self-sufficient. Europe chose to say that we will choose our own. They also built a nice train system. They said, for cities, we will start using the bicycles and save ourselves a lot of pain.
Right.
Of course, the US went back and struck a nice deal and ensured their oil sufficiency till now. And the small countries said that, yeah, we can't do this thing.
Yeah.
We will just do our own stuff. We can't strike these kind of deals.
Right.
Now, of course, with the European Union, they are trying something. But yeah, so different countries chose different ways of doing it, and we are now at a stage where we have the growth spurt happening, right? We are still a $3,000 per capita income country. Even Mexico is at 15,000. China is already 20,000. So the economy will spurt, and the motor vehicle is still positioned as a lifestyle entry, lifestyle choice.
Right.
But cities don't benefit from it, right? You're going around the neighborhood, you're unnecessarily making a mess of it.
Right.
So there are limitations to growth, and we have to adjust and see how we change the build form. And it's in the right position now to take off. I think the next 5 to 6 years are going to be very critical for us in how we reshape our cities. and how we set the momentum, and maybe within the decade we may see drastic changes that will happen in the way we see, and cycling will have a good time by then.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I want to understand what all of us on the sidelines can do as well to help you there. Um, so right now, the what is this council for mobility that you I see in this here?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
what does it do?
so this was something that there's this global bicycle mayor campaign that was started by this Dutch entity called
Mm,
Bikes, right? So
mm,
as a part of that, we have about 100 bicycle mayors across the world,
mm,
and I'm one among
mm.
them trying to make a change.
Right.
It gives a visible face to the campaign. It's very important to have that,
Yeah.
and for communication, for ability to represent issues and bring cycling to the forefront, it was required. But then I realized along the way that it's not sufficient to have one person. It's okay to represent and all that, but for change to happen, we need to get it down to ward level, because our cities are huge.
Right.
And you can take the ward we are sitting in right now. It's quite huge, and it has its own issues which are different from the ward in the center of the city, possibly.
Correct.
Right? We need to start understanding localization. We need to start understanding people who are willing to step up and say, I am wired like you. I'd like to do something for the greater good. I want to solve challenges,
Yeah.
and I will take on it, and I have the perseverance to do those things. So we are trying to find such people who can belong to this group of people who will make the change, and try and see how do we collectively understand this city.
Right.
How do we collectively understand what is your neighborhood like?
Mm.
Who are the people living in your neighborhood? What is their socioeconomic status? What is their current pattern of movement? What is your infrastructure looking like?
Mm.
It's usually all bad, but
Right.
what is bad and what is decent, and how do we get it up to different levels?
Right.
So I thought of setting up this. We used to call them bicycle counselors.
Right.
I launched this program. The deputy chief minister then launched that application process, and I had announced that this kind of decentralization is required, and we have a couple of other cities already doing this.
Mhm.
They've already, after the announcement in November of 2019, two cities went ahead and did it already, and they have counselors. Both Mumbai and Guwahati have counselors already, and
Awesome.
they're doing a bunch of work.
Mm.
And for me, it took a little longer, and then COVID hit,
Mm.
because I wanted to understand what does Bangalore really need, and how do we get outcomes
Right.
in our city.
Yeah.
We launched it in 2020 of March, the application process, and then the COVID hit, and then we went on to relief riders. And now we are in a situation where the DOLT commissioner helped us launch this Council for Active Mobility. We renamed the volunteers as active mobility counselors.
Active mobility counselors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because active mobility is a term people don't understand. It is about getting your transportation done, being active as well, which is walk and cycle in
Right.
general,
Yeah.
right? So these are modes that are environment friendly. It gets you healthy as well, and it creates a public space which is different. The way you
Mm.
experience the public space when you walk and bicycle
Right.
shapes what the city looks like.
Mm.
And if it shapes that way, your motor vehicle will also be okay.
Right.
But if it is shaped for the motor vehicle, everything else falls flat. You will never be able to get back. In a
Mm.
lot of places, you won't have accessibility when you walk, or it'll just get cut off when you're on a bicycle. Suddenly, you will find an ocean you can't cross in the middle of a
Right.
junction.
Right.
So the planning aspects, when you build from a walking and cycling perspective, starts making the city better, and then you start experiencing the city better.
Mm.
So that's why we see that we defocus and see how do we bring active mobility. So now they called active mobility counselor. They not only look at cycling, they also look at walking infrastructure.
Mm.
These two do go together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can walk to the lake and then run around, come back, and you can go to the shop walking, or you can, if it's a little farther, you can go cycling.
Right.
So Council for Active Mobility is set up with about 30 active mobility counselors, and we are looking to have a back office team there which does a bunch of things. And it's just a collective
Mm.
of many different people coming together. It's not
Right.
an organization per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah.
And each organization brings its own capacity into it.
Right.
And there are a lot of people. If you go to cfam.in,
Mm.
you will see that there are a lot of organizations which do different things, and we bring the collective effort of all these people together and see how do we deliver the outcomes of walking and cycling to cities and shape the built form
Right.
for the future.
Yeah, that is brilliant. I think that is where I think including more people, more like-minded people in this initiative kind of helps the whole thing move a lot faster and more efficiently, I guess. I should have started this interaction with this question. What is Bicycle Mayor and what is his role?
It is the only outcome that is defined for a bicycle mayor is to increase the mode share of bicycling in the city.
Yeah.
The goal is 50 by 30, which is 50% of trips in a city happens on a bicycle. It's an ambitious goal, but we all get there in different speeds.
Hmm.
Each city has its own speed of getting to it. It's a network of people,
Right.
and it is so they select people who can try and bring some amount of coordinated effort to pushing this. Otherwise, it's happening in many different places and nobody knows how it works. Or even otherwise, if you can't bring everyone together, the word everyone is misused. So big percentage of people who are willing to contribute
Yeah,
should be
yeah.
brought together and see how we can provide a certain set of directions
Hmm.
and goals towards achieving that outcome. That's the goal. How you get to it, different bicycle mayors have different starting points.
Right.
Some come from ride, some come from civic angle, some come from different angle of looking at things. So starting point depends on who that person is and how that city is and how it how the people are and what kind of a network already exists. How do you take on those responsibilities? While the starting points are same, the goals are the same. The starting points are different, the goals are the same, which is get more people cycling in your city. It's
Yeah.
good for your city.
Yeah.
Some people focus on infrastructure because they might be urban planners who have that skill and mindset already. Some might come from a civil society. I come from a public policy perspective,
Hmm.
which brings all these three things together.
Right.
Some are cyclists at heart, so they bring the rides into it and try to
Hmm.
influence that through that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
So we have to accept that it will be different starting points for people, but the goal is the same,
Hmm.
and the effectiveness will vary based on the city, based on how they do and what they do.
Right.
Uh,
When you were mentioning the goal of 50% mobility through cycles, I quickly remember, this thought came into my mind saying, we were almost close to maybe like
100%.
100%, at one point of time
Yeah,
back in the day.
yeah,
And it kind of quickly changed over the last few decades.
it did.
And hopefully in the decades that are going to come, maybe it will slowly go back to that, if not 100%, if 50% would be a great thing as well,
No, I
right?
think so. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that you bring up that point because until the liberalization, we hardly had any cars. I mean, we had a Maruti in the 80s. We had some ambassadors going around, but
Yeah.
otherwise, everybody had to even book a cycle to buy
Right.
one. I remember
Yeah.
my dad doing that, and I used to go to college on a bicycle.
Right.
The motor vehicle industry has its own advantages, and it brings to the table. Unfortunately, we are in a situation now. We need to turn around and make some changes. The fossil fuel thing that we have been consuming has been causing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It is science and it is not something that you and I can think it will go away. So we
Mm.
all have to collectively make a difference. So now is a point where we can pull the brakes. If 91 was the liberalization and we are only 40 years into cars, right?
Right.
Unlike the other countries which are 100 years into cars since
Yeah.
the Ford Model T,
Yeah.
it's harder for them to pull the road brakes and they've caused more damage and they have to do even more to do this. It's easier for us. I remember this incident where in Australia when they banned plastic in shops, single-use plastics, a huge uproar.
Mm.
How do we use bin liners? What we are used to that. They were
Right.
used to that, and there
Yeah.
was huge uproar, and they had to come back. The same thing happened in some African country where they said no plastic. They said, "Meh, you
Mm.
were using water. We didn't have plastic,
Yeah.
so you take it away. It's okay."
Yeah.
So the sooner you take it away, the harmful things, the better it is for us that we won't feel we have missed too much. Of course, already one generation is used to a motor car.
Right.
We've built our cities for that now.
Yeah.
Now we have to redo building our cities for something else.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's a process that we have to undo because we built it wrongly. We have to go back and correct and rebuild. But it's a
Mm.
long process
Mm.
of rethinking, and this is where the change making process is important now to kickstart and start slowly pulling your handbrakes.
Right.
Uh,
That is very interesting. So when it comes to kind of policy making aspect of, when you were saying you approach from a policy change approach. So what kind of things do you look at? And urban planning, being part of the urban planning thing is one of it, I guess. But
Yes.
what are the things that are going on right now
So the
in that area?
public policy broadly brings together the three pillars of democracy, which is the state, market, and society. Right. We have the governance as a pillar,
Right.
which is an animal in itself.
Mm.
Then we have the industry, which is the business as a pillar, which holds up the economy and the jobs and what we do every day when we go out.
Mm.
Right, it has commerce and everything building, and then there is society, what we do as individuals back when we come home, and how we consume these things together,
Right.
how we interact between ourselves, and how we look at the city and how we behave and what is our culture and all of those things. So the bringing together of these three at different points and in the same speed, you can't just focus on one and ignore the other, right? So that is where the whole public policy realm starts. And we try to figure out how do we do this, continuously figuring out how do we do this. So every day you wake up, you're trying to see which pillar are we trying to address, and all of these are running in parallel. It's something you do with the industry and the bike shops and the dealers and the manufacturers and other businesses, the IT people who consume these and are traveling and transporting.
Right.
So that whole economic engine is something you have to always look at. What are they doing? How do we get in there?
Right.
Then there's the governance angle, which is actually making decisions for us, making policies for us, making infrastructure for us. That is a huge animal we need to talk about. And every day you're also looking at what's going on there, how is that vehicle moving, and how do you get on that bus.
Yeah.
Then there's the society angle, where you and me, how are we making a change?
Right.
Our cultural attitudes towards this also needs to change. We have to look at active mobility as something that we can consume in a responsible way, and we participate in it in a proactive way, and in a way that it is additive to the other two, and is not completely in opposition to these other two.
Right.
You can't be making decisions, personal choices of buying more and more vehicles and not getting on a bicycle, and then telling the other two people to do something. They'll be like, you guys don't want it, what am I going to do? You are not cycling.
Exactly.
So why should I give you a bike lane or
Right.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So they'll come back and say, where are you and what army?
Right.
Right. So you have to build that.
It is a chicken and egg kind of thing, right? So when we do, a lot of people, when we don't start riding, okay, the people making the policies, governance policies, don't have the reason to
Yes.
put cycle lanes or whatever infrastructure needs, right? If they don't see us in enough numbers, they don't make the policy. And but if we sit back and say there are no
Infrastructure.
facilities and we can't ride like that, we are not going to move anywhere.
Yeah. So this is a nice thing you brought up, because again the parallelism is very important, right? There's a famous thing, right? You can't build a bridge based on the number of people swimming across the river. Only the guys who know how to swim and a few brave people will swim across the river and go to the other side, because it's compelling. But if you build a bridge, there are a lot of people who can't even swim who will still use it.
Right.
You have to build that, build it, and they will come principle. But at the same time, there needs to be a critical mass of people who get to tipping point. It's very important. That's why I said people like you and me and others who are today cycling, irrespective of what we have. You have bad roads, you'll buy an MTV.
Yeah.
But then you'll say, okay, off-roading starts right outside my gate.
Right.
So there are people who look at the glass half full and start taking it up.
Right.
And those are important people to work with, to see how do we then, and it's important for those people to stand up and say, hey, count me in it, right? So that's one part of the equation. The second part of it is also to say, how do we then get the rest of the people on? So one of the things CFAM is doing now is this thing called My15Min City, right? What we do is to say, take a pledge, count yourself into this equation. Yeah, I could stand and just count, but then come out there and say, look, I'm trying to make a difference and I want to be a part of this. So we're running a pledge campaign where we are saying to people, take the immediate neighborhood around your house, which is easy to do. I don't want you to ride 20 kilometers today.
Yeah.
Just start walking to, buy some groceries maybe. Or do you're going for a salon, or you're going to get a medical store or something like that. try and see if you can walk or cycle to that place alone. It can be so bad that you can't go. So most usually it is like traffic is very bad.
Right.
Not in front of your house.
Yeah.
Not to the corner store, not to the other stores and things like
Right.
that, right? You usually order in or you'll take a scooter and go there.
Yeah.
Can you make that choice that, okay, now this trip I'm not going to make. Let's say
Yeah.
you're making 10 trips in a week.
Can I walk to that corner
Yeah.
store
Yeah,
instead of taking the scooter?
exactly.
Yeah.
Or can I bicycle to that place and then come back? Right? It's a small trip. You anyway have to do that trip.
Yeah.
If you switch that trip over to something else like a bicycle or a walk,
Yeah.
you'll do a lot.
Yeah.
Take 10 trips you do in a week. Let's say you substitute 4 of them by walk and 3 of them by bicycle. 70% is done. And 70 is a huge percent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you didn't even feel a thing. You still do the rest 3 on your car or vehicle. There might have been an emergency. You can do that. Nobody is stealing your car away or taking it away. They're still having habit.
Yeah.
But it's in your willpower to make a choice. And you don't have to be doing it all the time. Do what you can in your neighborhood. Make it easy. Don't try to do big things. Do small things.
Like whatever takes like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's what 15 minutes paid.
That's all 15 minutes is. And when you make this 15 minutes neighborhood in different pockets all across, you got a 15-minute city.
Yeah.
There's a huge number of people doing this thing. It goes back to what we did with this thing with the relief riders, right? We didn't try to make people slog 24 hours a day. Say you have to dedicate yourself to saving these lives.
Right.
Everybody did a small bit.
Right.
In the end, we were able to do so much.
Hey, that brings us nicely into this relief riders initiative that was started in the first wave, right? So give me a idea, how did it start? How did the idea came about? How did it all kickstart?
Like this was in March of 2020 sometime.
March
27th
2020.
or something.
Yeah.
I think a day after the lockdown started, somebody tweeted and said, "What are the cyclists of Bangalore doing?" I don't know if it was sarcastic or what, but I took it seriously.
Yeah.
I then asked my Cycle to Work group, which I've been running for the past 2 years, the Cycle to Work platform, which has got about 300 companies on it, and we've clocked more than 80,000 trips. So that Cycle to Work platform we had a bunch of ambassadors in each of these companies. I just went and asked them, can we do something? One of them came up with a name, let's call it Relief Riders, and let's just start delivering some relief to people, because you're supposed to stay indoors. So we started in the first wave. There were close to 80, and then quickly it grew. I just put out an open call on my Twitter handle, and a lot of people joined in and said, "Hey, I don't mind doing it."
Right.
So we had about 80 people. We served about 250 people in the first wave, and a lot of people found it exciting because it was being done in a different way using a bicycle, and you anyway have to deliver the medicine. Somebody has to go buy groceries. It's either the elderly who, if they step out, will get infected. I said, we are younger people. We will wear our masks and go and help you out. So we did a socially distanced way of delivering. It became a huge hit. So when the second wave hit, I restarted it again. In fact, the whole group was already there from the last time. They didn't have, nobody, a few people dropped out, the rest of them were still there. And they just said, oh, we have to start. Lockdown is starting April 6th or something. And then they just, in fact, one day before, one of the guys already did a sortie. He said, I've already delivered this evening because lockdown is coming next day. Yeah. And then we put out a call again, and this time we had more than 275 people join us in the effort. And this time, many other cities also took up across the country. There are 12 cities, more than 725 relief riders who delivered to more than 2,000 people. We saved 4 tons of carbon dioxide emissions by doing the same thing.
No, forget carbon emissions, right? The number of people who served, the relief riders served, is huge. And it all started with that thought, and you acting on that thought, right? So it is easy to say, okay, what are, if someone tweeted what are cycling doing about, right? It's just can be ignored, but you took that thought forward and acted on it, and that from that one thing, it ballooned into so many people who are stuck in lockdowns, who have no ability to, who are infected and cannot move outside, quarantined, locked down completely. They obviously have to eat, take medicines
Yes.
and everything, and they have no way of getting out.
Yeah.
And so many of the riders became angels in that
Yeah.
period, and delivered everything that is needed
Correct.
right on time in a very safe social distancing way. And as I said, it was just one city in the first lockdown, and by the time the second wave hit, there were 12 cities.
Yeah.
And how awesome is that?
It is massive.
Y-
But we also learned a lot of things along the way. Is
Mm.
that the back office team that took over the second time around,
Right.
right? It was amazing that we
A
all came
lot
together
of
and we offered and said, let's coordinate this together, right? It's a
right.
volunteer effort at the
Yeah,
end of the
yeah,
day.
yeah.
We built tools. There were people, we built tools which said, who is the closest person who can go and do this? We don't want people like Dunzo people running around all over the place and
Absolutely.
spreading everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So how do we find the closest person? How do we then, the back office team evolved a process, like almost 25 people trying to coordinate this thing. And riders were making, so it was a very nice collaborative effort. Everybody felt like they were doing something, and we aggregated small wins. Each person has to do only one or two sorties in a day,
Right.
but in the end, look what happened. So this is importance of saying that do small things. It's the same thing with the My15Min City. Don't think of 10 people slogging 24/7 thinking we can save the world. Everybody do small things. It
Yeah.
aggregates. It's called the Dunker's radiation effect. You'll read that up. It's how do you then attack the problem in a way that everybody does small things and then you get collective, cumulative results.
Mm.
I think that was useful. That we should all the volunteers who stepped up and said we'll coordinate these things.
Yeah.
We will streamline all of these things, right? How do we set these things together? It's an amazing team of people who came together, and
Yeah.
those friendships last long.
Man, that's the team, like you said, the back office team that coordinated everything
Yeah, amazing.
is amazing.
If it wasn't for a team effort, no, these
Yeah.
things don't happen. It's not about one person anymore.
No.
You can seed a thought and do all of these things, but you cannot pull off everything. You need people around you to do this. Without people like you, me, all the people in the back office, I need to give a shout out. I need to read the names of people.
Yeah.
That's how many people are involved. Every volunteer who's even delivering made decisions of how they will deliver. People delivered in the rain. And they said, I don't want you to step out. If you step out, you'll infect someone. You still need to have food. You need to have medicines. If nobody delivers, and of course, the professional delivery services were trying to do their bit.
Right.
It was not to replace them. It was to
Correct.
complement them during times of need, because their labor was also getting infected.
Yeah.
Half of them labor force had gone home back. They were having long waiting queues. In fact, some of our people delivered even before they could get a Dunzo on their wait, or anybody else, right?
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
all affected. They were not that they didn't want to or they abdicated responsibilities. They were trying their best, but they had longer lists, and we just stepped in and said, let's help out.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah, absolutely. A very important point there, because a lot of migration happened, right? People going back to their villages and all that, and the manpower in almost all the services have been hugely hit.
Yes.
And I think that's where the relief riders have filled in a gap, and in a very, very effective way. And I had the good fortune of being a part of that effort in the second wave. And when I made the delivery, right, the thankfulness from the person receiving it,
isn't that good?
it's amazing, right? Yeah.
So the point is not to think that it's each individual contribution makes a lot. We always seem to think that we have to move the world ourselves. We have to spend 24 hours a day doing something.
Right.
But try and make small differences in your life and belong to some of these things. It makes a lot of difference. And every time we come together for these kind of things, it builds new people. And a lot of people I have met with the relief riders and other efforts are people who have not met before,
Right.
or who have not spent time with before. And a lot of the active mobility counselors come from this team of people, because I have seen them do the work selflessly.
Yeah.
They have come out, and there's a lot of back office team members who have come out. They've shown what they can do, and they've themselves come and offered, let's take this to the next level. The motivation is there to say, I want to belong to something bigger and better.
Yeah.
right? Of course, it's a lot of hard work, but
Yeah.
we can split it down. We can say, let's chew it, in small
Break
pieces.
it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah, so one of the key things that we are trying to do, how I always keep thinking about how do I break it down into small chunks that people can actually do, because the
Right.
things are large.
Yeah.
But I want people to do something.
Right. Absolutely. And that's really good. And the Relief Riders initiative got award recently. What
Yes,
is that?
so the founder of the World Bicycle Day, who who actually made UN make it the World Bicycle Day,
Hmm.
he's giving out an award for these things. It started last year. I think this year we got a special award for. It's a tribute to all the 725 relief riders across the 12 cities, and it belongs to each one. I'm just collecting it on their behalf.
Yeah.
But it belongs to each one of us who said we want to put the cycle front and center. We want to
Right.
convey a message to the people that we are not a problem,
Hmm.
we are a solution.
Yeah.
People need to understand that when a person comes to you on a bicycle delivering relief when you need, you will think about that a little differently. You won't think about it that it's
It's a
not
nuisance.
so at,
Yeah.
at some point it'll leave an impression on you that somebody came on a bicycle and helped me out,
Right.
and the next time they see a bicycle they might have some respect for it.
Yeah.
It may not be life changing, but at least they will not treat it with disdain.
Right.
And that was one of the key things that we wanted to do on a bicycle, and show the respect that we can do things.
Hmm.
People have carried 16 17 kilos of weight on their backpacks delivering food supplies.
Yeah.
Not because, and these are people who don't generally do that, right?
Yeah.
They go on a road bike, you go cycling far and all those things. You don't generally want to carry 18 kilos. You want to do 18 kilos, you'll probably pick a scooter and run.
Yeah.
But then they did it because, and then they figured out that you can do these things. It's not such a big hassle.
Right.
People started buying panniers, and
Yeah.
they started looking, okay,
I can
now my cycle has to take more than just my bum.
Right.
It has to take other things. It has to take things. So I have to build my cycle differently. I have to stop looking at the bicycle with just a seat on it.
Right.
Where is the carrier? You'll never buy a scooter without a carrier.
Yeah.
You'll open it and see, can it carry a helmet? Can it carry this? Can it? But only the bicycle will say, if it carries my bum, I'm good. That's why cycling has this rap of saying it's only for exercise.
Right. No, but all the Dulwala cycles come with a carrier,
Rack at
carrier
least,
and the mud guards and everything, right? And
it's built functionally, but
it is been-
yeah, there are different categories of.
Yeah.
But when you do something like this, you have to start thinking about the utility of the bicycle in your city, and that will come only when you are committed to saying, I want to do certain things like this also.
Hmm. It will also, like you said, it also has maybe a beneficial effort to the rider himself, realizing, okay, this is something that I can do more of. Like I can get my, if I can deliver this much to others, I can get my groceries on that, like
Why
that.
can't I use it for
And I
myself?
can, use my bike to the commute with carrying the laptop and other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a positive all around.
Yeah. Now we are starting to look for, where are these products?
Hmm.
Why are they so expensive? Why is the baby carrier so expensive? Why is the pannier so expensive? How can I get more of these things?
Right.
How do I get lights on me? How do
Hmm.
I get the other things? How do I build my bicycle so now it becomes a utility bike? Where are the cargo bikes around? So it leads to opportunities now
Hmm.
of bringing in cargo bikes. I'm trying to bring them in. They're very expensive in Europe. Now you have to make them here if you want to
Right.
make them cheaper. Who's
Right.
building cargo bikes? How do we make them popular?
Hmm.
Then a whole category of products start coming to the market. You need a cycle to do this. You need these things to do that. You can't just so if you want to carry something, you need a bag. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
So a lot of these now will lead to the new wave of newer and newer things that come in and assist these people in doing it better and better. So that's why I said these three pillars have to keep moving in parallel. They are not one after the other. So the products need to come in, the people need to be wanting to do that, and then the governance coming and saying, I'll build things for you.
Yeah.
You have to keep this like this chess, right? You can't just keep moving the queen alone. It doesn't
Correct.
work. You have to the rest of them also have to go and support each other.
Yeah.
So you have to move this thing like a chess.
Awesome. Let's expand on the cycle to work initiative and how it had made a change and how people can be part of it.
Okay, so this is the reverse chronological way. The Council for Change in the last one, and then the Relief Riders, and the Cycle to Work started about in 2018 on September 22nd of Car Free Day of 2018, I launched it.
Yeah.
That was one of my first initiatives that I had launched.
Mm.
I found that there was an IISc study which said 40% of our emissions in the city are transport linked.
Mm.
And a lot of that, a huge percentage of that is repeated commute by IT workers in this city.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of tech heavy population, and they use a
Correct.
lot of motor vehicles, and
Yeah.
they go around. Of course, you have to exclude a certain segment, but a major percentage, 60 to 70 percentage of them is repeated tech commutes.
Yeah.
That led me to think that who are the people who are causing the problem? It's us.
Yeah.
Right? We had the livelihood cyclists who anyway have to cycle because their cost structures don't allow them to have a choice of a motor vehicle. But their aspirations are to move to that. Because
Right.
if you ask him, I asked a gardener once, he said, "Sir, you are the people who are telling me I have to buy a motor vehicle, I have to upgrade to a car." So he slogs, builds EMIs, and buys a motor vehicle for no reason. And he's unnecessarily doing that. But anyway, and he's unsafe because some of us choose to not
Yeah.
acknowledge that, right?
Correct.
But we ourselves can't empathize because we don't ride ourselves.
Yeah.
So the concept came that I built a tech platform. It's called Cycle to Work,
Mm.
cycle2.work, where I gamified the whole process. And I got some of us who are already commuting to say, why don't we clock our miles and show to the rest of the world? And again, the intent there was the same thing, you and what army kind of thing, right? If you
Right.
want cycling infrastructure, you want to show that a substantial number of people commute.
Mm.
So I had almost quite a few companies, and then every quarter we used to give out these Cycle to Work awards. Because of the pandemic, it has stopped. I want to restart.
Yeah.
The top 3
Because the
companies.
commutes only the kind of stopped, right?
Yeah, commutes
with
have,
more work from home.
I think it's gone back to 2017. It's come back to 2017 levels. It's gone absolutely zero when the first wave hit. It's come back up to 2017 levels
Right.
based on the Strava Metro data.
Yeah.
It had peaked nicely. The commute and recreational rides were together. In Bangalore, especially, it
Yeah.
was always together. I
Yeah.
mean, the same number of rides clocked between commute and this. The graph was together,
Mm.
and then it split. The commute dropped, and the recreational riding went up 5-fold in the pandemic,
Right.
and
It's very
5 times
understandable.
500% growth easily.
Yeah.
And it's just peaked there because the gyms were closed and,
Yeah.
and a lot
Yeah.
of other things, and
Yeah.
we were making noises about reset with cycling and all of those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did go up. But the Cycle to Work gamified the whole process, and you just log in, you track your ride on Strava. We have an algorithm which picks whether you went to office or not. We used to ignore the recreational rides because those are not carbon offsets.
Right.
Those are trips you do because you want to do for your
Correct.
health.
Yeah.
If you are going to use a motor vehicle, instead you chose this, then that's an offset.
Yeah.
So these trips are anyway forced. You have to go to work.
Yeah.
And when you go to work, if you replaced it, we will have to assume that you are going to use some other vehicle and then calculate the offset
Yeah.
there. And we had substantial savings in offset. We were saving the equivalent of 100, 200 trees every year.
Wow.
That's where we are at right now. That's the equivalent of that much we are saving.
Right.
80 plus, it's almost 90,000 trips now. It's a live leaderboard. You go to cycle2.work, you can see
Yeah.
how many people are doing how many rides and what it is and all that. So that kind of led to a lot of interventions. The utility of that is not just to help you ride more and get more people to ride. And it wasn't clocking it wasn't incentivizing on kilometers. I didn't want you to do a brevet to work every day.
Right.
But if you chose to do it more often, and the more number of people in your company did, we just weighted that more. So even if you're doing 3-4 kilometers, don't worry. But the fact that you chose the bicycle is more important for us.
Right.
And that you're doing it more frequently is more important for us. And it's
Yeah.
more sustainable for you if you do smaller rides.
Correct.
Then that led to a couple of things that I thought I should mention now is we found that almost 54% of the companies that registered on Cycle to Work were on the outer ring road. It has about 6 lakh employees there. Just imagine even if 20% of them rode a bike to work every day, that is 1.2 lakh cycles just on that 17-kilometer stretch.
Yeah.
That's the amazing potential that there is. Just 20%.
Right.
20% can show you that much more. We are now calculating what that could be. Now, that also, we went to the government, we went to Directorate of Urban Land Transport and showed them the data and said, can we have some infrastructure here? So the pop-up bicycle lanes came up in the pandemic. Of course, it's popping a little slowly in our country, you know how pop-ups work. But it has now almost reached quite a substantial thing. There are some sticky points which we can't address because the city is not built that way.
Right.
So you go to Marthali Bridge or Salem Junction, you are going to be stuck. You can't do anything unless getting on the carriageway.
Correct.
So we have those kind of real physical challenges. Now people are realizing we didn't build this for cyclists. We didn't build this for people who walk. People who walk can't even cross that Marathali thing wherever they go. You have like 3 feet high wall. They're basically saying you cannot walk, you cannot cycle.
You
That's how
just
you
have
build
to,
it. You are forced. You are
Yeah.
being shoved into a motor vehicle because of the infrastructure, right? So we discovered those things, but it was good. So one thing was the advantage of cycle to work was it gave enough data for people to make an infrastructure that you can see and feel today. Of course, it's another challenge that we have to protect and preserve it by riding more. The second thing that came about during that time was the comprehensive mobility plan was being drawn out for Bangalore. And I made the representation showing, look, so many of us are cycling around, we need infrastructure. It had about 175 kilometers in the master plan saying we will build 175 kilometers of cycle tracks in the city. I told them this is nothing. We have 14,000 kilometers in BBMP area alone.
Right.
And the master planning is 1,600 square kilometers, which is double that. And in 14,000 kilometers, the big roads, arterial roads are around 2,000. Said minimum to cover 20% of Bangalore, we need 2,000 kilometers of cycle tracks.
Right.
Just to give people a confidence.
Yeah.
Of course, you might possibly be living in the rest 80%.
Yeah.
That's a different problem to be solved.
Absolutely.
But it gives you a good signaling that we welcome cyclists. These are the bridges we are building for you. Start.
Yeah.
Right? Always there will be a problem. You know, you'll never be able to get a cycle track to your doorstep. That's an unreasonable expectation. But on high speed corridors, where traffic is moving fast and where you really need your protection, you will get it.
Yeah.
But for 2000, we had to show this data and say, look, this is what's happening. They settled on 600. So we were able to influence saying that for them, 600 looks a lot because they can't build it. They can if they want, but they're not building at that pace. They're building 5-10 kilometers a year. So if you want to build 600, you'll take 60 years. Right? So I told them, if your plan is 15 years, can you build 600? I said, if you want to build 2000, which is ideal, you have to be building at the rate of 200 kilometers every year in order for you to finish by 2030.
Right.
At the rate of 10 kilometers, it's not going to work out. Okay, you take the first 2 years and get your feet wet. They've not got the pigmenting right. They're using paint. Then the junctions, they don't know what to do. It's like, should I be doing this at this junction? There are lots of problems in that. It's not perfect.
Right.
But to get this is where it is. Then we have to be building at a breakneck speed.
Yeah.
They can do it. White top roads were built in the last 2 years. They built 200, 300 kilometers of white top roads. That's far more. So where there is a will, there is a way. But it requires a lot of us to come together and say, now we will you to do it. Please do.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, the great point about how cycle to work influenced the pop-up cycle path on ORR. I think that even if it is like broken in parts, or you can't have a continuous path, it I think it still encourages people.
It is a bright signal. I'll tell you why this is important. Even today in Amsterdam, 40 years of building cycle tracks, they're still fixing roundabouts. They're still saying this is not nice, we'll do it this way. Oh, this junction is not safe, we'll do it around like this. So it evolves over time.
Right.
For us, we have to claim as much space as possible now before it goes away.
Yeah.
Because our car ownership is still less compared to other countries. We're still trying to buy more vehicles. We have to pull the handbrakes.
Right.
And we have to claim our space today.
Yeah.
We're only claiming 1.5 meters. Your car tire also won't come in that space. That 1.5 meters, claim as much as possible first. Then keep going and fixing. This is not like you told them and they will build it and you'll ride it. They are also figuring out how to build a cycle track. Some contractors come, they do nasty thing, they don't know. Some guys don't know. We've had to tell. They went and figured out what pigment to use, what it is to use, and what kind of cycle tracks need to be done. A lot of designs and specifications were given. A lot of urban planners need to start thinking like that. They are also like, oh my God, we have to build for the motor vehicle. They built on the V/C ratio, what they call vehicle to capacity ratio, and the vehicles they count is only the motor vehicles. Right. So every infrastructure is V/C. Yeah. The LOS is low, so we have to build it. So let's go V/C. So there is a problem in how they visualize this because they are afraid of radical things. This is still radical. It's still not popular.
Yeah.
So we have to claim our space, claim it in large volumes, and continue to fix.
Mm.
The government ecosystem learns along the way.
Yeah.
They get their own muscle memory after a while.
Yeah.
It has to go into systems. It's still not, all the cycle tracks are still projects.
Mm.
A new tender need not necessarily have this in your definition of a road.
Mm.
It is a project which is added on.
Mm.
Now the effort needs to be that every road mandatorily have to look at, if your ROW is 12 meters, what do you get? If it's 15 meters, what do you get? If it's 18 meters, what do you get? If it's 24, what do you get? So you have to start thinking, if it's a one way, what do you do? You have to look at reducing carriageways. So there's a lot of technicalities that they need to internalize.
Mm.
Their contractors are not built for this. They are not built for thinking like this. Their systems are not built. And doing a cycle track or a footpath is quite expensive.
It is.
Because you have so many utilities. It is actually 5 times more expensive if you ask me.
Mm.
Yeah, because you have so many things on. You have lights, you have trees, you have ducting, you have street furniture, you have ingress egress of properties, you have gates, you have this. So there are hundreds of things you have to look at,
Mm.
right? And how do you build a footpath which accommodates? So in on a road, you just have road, tar, you're done.
That's
you know,
it.
make it as thick as possible, you're done.
Yeah.
What else do you have? Nothing gets on the road. Everything gets on the footpath.
Yeah.
Everything is shoved onto the footpath. So
Right.
it needs more money, more allocation, more attention to details.
Mm.
How do you get this property to come in and out? How does the slope happen? If there are so many properties, how does the slope happen? And what happens every time somebody interrupts you?
Mm.
How do you move this somewhere else so the interruptions are minimized?
Right.
So the planning, and see, when it's hard work, people just say put the road and move, let them figure out what they want to do.
Yeah.
This is where, if you want to have a structured way and it smoothens when everybody gets off and onto the footpath and you have a cycle lane and all that, your traffic is smoother.
Yeah.
Because right now everybody is there and trying to hog the same space, right?
Mm.
You think it is okay, but it is not.
Yeah.
You can make it more efficient when you build it nicely.
Right.
So it needs to seep in. It takes a cultural shift, both among people. And today people ask me, why is the footpath so expensive?
Mm.
Of course it is. It is supposed to be 5 times more. You've shoved everything onto the footpath.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. So this you said the mobility plan, the comprehensive mobility plan, they came down to 600 kilometers now. And so how are they phasing it? Like
Don't ask me.
yeah.
They'll just put some random numbers in there. You'll go and see it makes no sense. It's just
Yeah.
some numbers. It's a document. It's a legal document. We
Yeah.
can hold them to it. So we
Yeah.
are going to hold them to it.
Yeah.
But we have to figure. So the Directorate of Urban Land Transport has come up with the cycling district plan, right? So they basically, what they do is they craft into 5 or 6 cycling districts, and they're trying to see how we can build one piece by one piece, starting from what has already been built and how do you extend. It's not. It's based on how quickly we can get at least some of these things going, and there are some existing tenders there, plans here. How do we bring them together? We're trying to see how we can extend them at least along the corridors to see how can we get them to more places. It's something that we need to, and one of the things that the Active Mobility Council will also be, Council for Active Mobility will be doing, is the councillors will be collecting data at a ward level. Master plan is always done from the top down. You know, they just
Right.
draw some lines here and say, okay, it looks like 12 meters, let's make it 18 meters. Some green, red, blue lines and all that.
Right.
I'm simplifying it. They
Yeah.
actually have urban planners doing it, but it's
Yeah.
top down.
Correct.
It doesn't come into this small roads here, there, are not figuring in that.
Yeah.
So bringing it up from ward level makes sense, right? You understand your neighborhood. It's always having to be bottom up. So now we are trying to collect data at a bottom up level to say, how can we form these networks? And if you want to form cycling networks inside your area, it's a lot more thinking. Which roads have what properties? Which is less traffic, which is more traffic? Can we have these alternates going through? How do we slow them down? I talked about the rest 80% never having a cycle track. Those 80% need to have slow traffic so that you feel safer.
Yeah.
It needs to have trees and other amenities which make you want to use those paths. You need to have signboards and marks. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's a lot of work to be done. And we are nowhere even starting. We just sit here and say cycle tracks need to come, I will ride. It is not going to happen.
Yeah. Great. So this has been a fantastic session, Satya. It's been very informative and enlightening. What can we do as all the listeners, all of us working athletes can do to help you in this path?
I think just take the pledge first of all,
Right.
and it's on cfam.in. Just go and say, I pledge to walk and cycle more. I think that's a very important step that you say. It lends it lets you be counted. You can say, I'm already doing it. Yes, you are, but I don't know, and I needed to. See, the government always says, I don't see you people. I say they are not sitting around on a traffic jam waiting to show you, right? I mean, they are all quick. We are people who on a bicycle we are quick. We just go here, there, everywhere, and on side streets, and we'll reach. Nobody has to see us on a traffic jam all the time, but we need to be counted.
Right.
We have to be counted, and we have to be able to tell them that we as citizens are willing to do it now. Where's your infrastructure?
Right.
I want to see it. That's a very important part. I think pledging is the first step you need to do. That lets me know that, okay, all of you guys are in on this, and we can collectively go somewhere. Not all, as many of you as you can. I don't want everybody to be forced into something they're not comfortable with. But if you're comfortable with this, saying that I'd like to be counted, please do that. And I keep running into programs now and then. Whenever you have the time and ability to participate, please do join. It need not be all the time, but at some, we try not to do just too many things. But when we do things, it's nice to show up and meet other people and say, it's nice to see this community coming together. You may meet new people, you may not. It's okay.
Absolutely.
But if it's in your area, you can join.
Yeah, and also people can join Cycle to Work.
Absolutely.
And that site cycle2.work.
Cycle2.work, cycleto.work. You just sign up there and right to work. When you clock it on Strava, we are able to pull it. Cycle to work is one thing where you can show your commuting. The pledge campaign is useful to say that if you do these small things that we are already doing, it is very useful for us in the long run. So these are two things that we are heavily focusing on for the next year. At least we want to run the whole My15Min City as a concept, and run lots of different programs around that. You can volunteer. When you fill up the pledge, there is a place to volunteer and say, I'd like to do something. So now, let's say the data collection piece comes up. You can just ride around in your neighborhood and say what it looks like, and join the team to do something. We're trying to build better business. So if you have some places you frequent, like a coffee shop or something, talk to them and say, hey, can you put up a cycle parking here? I can help you. We can build that. So if you convince 10-15 people in your entire neighborhood to do that, that's 10 into 5 is 10 into 10 is already 100 parking slots in your, and it need not be all the place, some friendly guys, talk to them and say, hey, you look good, we'll list them on the site. You look good if you create a parking lot. It doesn't cost very much to put a standard U-rack. It's like 3K or something. You put 5 of them, you can park 10 cycles. Some 15K you spend, you'll get good.
That's
stuff.
how you affect the culture slowly, one little change at a time.
More cycle parking you see, you can go to that store and you can park it there and walk around. You can lock it and go.
it there.
So if one guy says, I will do it, give him a nice, we got this nice pledge campaign sticker that he's a bike friendly business. So when you go out on your ride, you can pick that guy and go stand there and have your biryani with that guy. And say, I'm coming here because you gave me a respect. So these are things you can nudge people.
Right.
To say, why don't you belong to this community? We'll all help each other.
Yeah.
You look good as well.
Yeah, I'll start with all my biryani places, I guess.
Just give me a safe space,
Yeah.
and we will count you.
Right.
That you welcome cycling. And you can put like a Swiggy sticker. I will design one and give you. You can put it out there and say, look.
Right. Great. Great, Satya. This has been a fantastic session. Thank you for taking the time out and sharing your thoughts with us, all the working athletes listening. Please, do that 15-minute pledge. cfam.in is where you can do. And if you are, when the when the offices open up, when you start commuting to work, you can sign up on cycle2.work and clock your commutes there. All these things, as Satya said, will show that we exist, and there is a chance that more and more facilities come our way. So let's do that. And if you have not already subscribed, please do so on YouTube and your favorite podcasting app. That will help me do the work as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thanks.